Shalom, I'm Brother Rael from Reyahnited Soul, and in this video I'll be discussing the division between the black man and the black woman. Although we are the children of Yisrael, for all intents and purposes of this discussion, I'm going to use the term black to identify our people, the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. I ask that you please bear with me. So let us nourish our soul with scripture that we may reunite with the Most High, the Elohim of Yisrael. All scriptures will be read verbatim from the King James Version Bible. Now let's get right into it. If you ever had the privilege of listening to love songs from black artists of the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, you may be wondering how we, as a people, allow our relationship to sink to such an all-time low. Back in those days, our black men cherished our black women, and the songs they wrote back then made it very clear what made them so special. The black woman was beloved and protected by all her people, from the youngest to the eldest. And some of you may also remember being a young kid back in the day, and if anybody said anything derogatory about somebody's mama, you get a righteous beat down real quick. The mother was most definitely revered within the black community. Her long suffering and dedication to her people's future hasn't gone unnoticed. Mothers were memorialized in songs like I'll Always Love My Mama, released in 1973 by The Intruders, and Sadie, released in 1974 by The Spinners. Both songs beautifully captured the immense love, affection, and respect the black community had towards the mother. Our love songs about the black woman were timeless, heartfelt poetry that elevated her above all women, and rightfully so. The black woman birthed and mothered children through our people's greatest adversity, as well as stood by the black man and in some situations kept the household intact while the oppressor snatched him up to do evil upon him. There are many reasons why the black woman is adored by her people. The adoration for her is forever memorialized in love songs written by those who loved her most. These weren't generic love songs that could have been sung to any woman of any nationality. No, not at all. These songs were custom made for the black woman, in that her legacy of her enduring love and tenderness will never be forgotten. And that's why our oppressor had to put an end to that, which I'll discuss in a moment. Now, if given the task to discuss the problems concerning the relationship of the black man and the black woman, I would have an abundance of material for this discussion. My comment section would be stimulated with brothers and sisters and trolls going in on one another. Some reasonable, but many unreasonable with their comments. One thing is for sure, social media has capitalized from this discussion to where some channels are devoted to it, with many followers. Now, the cure-all remedy for the black man and the black woman is what thus saith the Most High. We are his people, and he is our Elohim. When you read the Tanakh or the Old Testament, know that you're reading about our ancestors and what the Most High instructed them to do, as well as the prophetic events that will occur. Unfortunately, not everyone is on the same page biblically, which complicates matters within our community. And just to be clear, when I say what thus saith the Most High, that doesn't include the New Testament scriptures for two good reasons. First, the Most High doesn't speak in the New Testament. And second, our people for generations devoted ourselves to New Testament doctrine that bears no fruit. Truth be told, our communities continue to struggle to provide economic opportunities year after year, while oppression looms over our children's future. We have so many churches in our black communities that you'd think it was the Holy Land. That being said, I have a legitimate question. Do you think it would have made our communities any worse if those churches were never there? If not, then what purpose did they serve? Just as the colonizers divided Africa, we too were kept divided as a people and easily manipulated by our oppressors. Even our so-called woke community have various factions. My task, however, is not just to highlight the problem, but to provide a viable solution. So in order to do that, I'm going to cover 3 very important areas that require our due diligence as a people. Number 1, we must identify the mechanisms designed to cause the divide between the black man and the black woman. Number 2, we must identify and compartmentalize those contributing to that divide. And most importantly, number 3, we need to know what thus said the Most High about his people. Number 1 is quite a high hurdle to jump. Most of you have heard the saying, you can't help a person unless they want to be helped. Or, you can't save a victim unless they know that they're being victimized. Although our people have been through the savagery of slavery, Jim Crow era injustice, civil rights injustice, war on drugs injustice, and the injustice of incarceration, we haven't come to terms with the reality that a significant amount of the world's population wants to erase our existence. Don't be naive to think that the past 400 years of murder, discrimination, and injustice was just a phase of temporary insanity. No, not at all. It was purposely thought out and meticulously coordinated by educated people. Yes, I know it's a hard pill to swallow. Just the thought of someone consumed by so much hatred would design a sophisticated system that would bring an entire people to their knees economically. And by sophistication, I mean being able to hide their true intent. Let's take apartheid era South Africa, for example. The native South Africans knew without a shadow of a doubt that they were systematically oppressed and living in an apartheid state. You didn't have to convince them. They all knew it. Apartheid was unapologetically in their face. They also knew that they despised apartheid, which allowed them to unite as a people to stand against it. The native South Africans accepted the reality and resisted as a united front. That apartheid government survived 46 years. Now, our situation is a bit more complex because we have integration. We have black millionaires, black businesses, black celebrities, and interracial marriage. Some will say, how can we be oppressed as a people with all these freedoms and options? We'll always have a small segment of our people resisting our oppressors, but the chance of a united front is unlikely to happen. This sophisticated system gives the illusion that everyone operates on a fair and level playing field, that the American dream is available to all who are willing to work hard. Although this may not be true, it doesn't spark a call to action as apartheid did in South Africa. Some people actually believe that over time racism will fade away like magic, although it's been going on strong for the past 400 years. So, the main mechanism for this system of oppression is money. It signifies status, validates credibility, and defines success. With money, you can turn puppets into kings and kings into puppets. With money, you can infiltrate movements and destroy it from within. Now, allow me to pose a few questions. Who do you feel have the upper hand when negotiating? Those who print the money or those who spend the money? Those who pay the talent or those who have the talent? Those who own the corporations or the consumers who support it? The one who supplies the demand or the one who demands the supplies? They all hold negotiating power, but the one who's willing to hold out the longest has the upper hand. Take our highly talented athletes, for example. With all that talent, why don't we as a people have our own league? How about the entertainment industry? Here we are, a very talented people, always being overlooked or minimized when it comes time to receive awards for our contributions. Why don't we just establish our own? Well, it's because of money. Not the lack of, but the willingness to run to it. Money has always been a tool to monopolize our people's talent. They'll always throw more money at our talent to get them to cross over to their side. Look at our extremely talented old school musicians, groups like the Commodores and Earth, Wind and Fire and many more. Their songs are timeless and are still popular to this day. However, many lead singers were offered more money to go solo, thus causing the ruin of many great bands. And black record labels such as Motown couldn't resist the lure. Remember the historic Negro League baseball that started in the 1920s? It lasted about 20 years. And what do you think caused the end of the Negro League baseball? Our highly talented athletes integrating into the white major league teams. Yeah, the same league that wouldn't allow our black athletes on their field. In retrospect, with our highly talented athletes, the Negro League would have surpassed the white-only major league as far as quality sportsmanship. They saw it coming and were forced to open their doors, or, heaven forbid, lose their audience to the Negroes. You see, in this oppressive system, they don't have to be better than the competition. They just simply have to buy them out. Now keep this in mind. Whenever we as a people integrate, we sacrifice having our own, because our oppressor is always willing to buy those who are willing to sell out. Our oppressors don't like competing, especially with people they deem as inferior. Case in point, if they can't buy out the competition, they'll just destroy it, as in Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. Black Wall Street is known as the single worst incident of racial violence in American history. Let me repeat that. Single worst incident of racial violence in American history. Attacked by white rioters on the ground and combined with private aircraft dropping firebombs from the sky, they destroyed 35 blocks of the wealthiest black community in the United States. The aftermath, up to 300 black people killed, 800 hospitalized, more than 6,000 arrested or detained, and 10,000 left homeless. And you won't be surprised if you don't already know what caused the whites to riot. It's the same old song and dance. If you're not familiar with the story, please look it up and share it, especially with your children. They really need to know who they're dealing with before they reach adulthood and start marrying. Now that we have a little background on how money and the use of violence was used in the past to subjugate the black community, let's see how it's currently being used to divide the black man and the black woman. For example, there's a reason why black men struggle to find good employment. There's a reason why black men struggle to provide for their family. There's a reason why our men are targeted and profiled by law enforcement agencies. There's a reason why our men are incarcerated at a much higher rate. There's a reason why it's hard for felons to find employment that supports a living wage. And there's a reason why felons are not allowed to own firearms. So we have many of our black men struggling to provide and protect the black woman. When a man is not functional as he should be within the family structure, dysfunction will take its place. And with dysfunction comes a host of other problems. So there's a reason why many of our fathers are absent from the family unit. There's a reason why many of our young boys have no positive role models. There's a reason why violence within our communities are taking our young men's lives. There's a reason why our young boys and girls are being introduced to alternative lifestyles. We are currently in the land that is not ours and fulfilling biblical prophecy. Let's go to the scriptures. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 64 through 68, and I read. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, Would God it were even. And at even thou shalt say, Would God it were morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondman and bondwoman, and no man shall buy you. It's right there in the scriptures. It's happening because the Most High spoke it. You see, my beloved sisters, when you know the truth, then you know that our struggles are by design. It's not that your black man is inept. We as the children of Yahweh have been given into the hands of a people that will persecute us to the very end of our captivity. The Most High spoke it, now we're living it, and the Most High will deliver us from it. Yes, of course, our oppressors have a hand in it, but they are merely pawns that will be judged and discarded by the Most High once our time is served. Understand, sisters, when you're unaware of these biblical truths, you'll begin wondering what's wrong with your black man. Why can't he get things done like other men? You get tired of seeing your black man struggling because eventually his struggles become your struggles. When you are unaware of these truths, you'll become insubordinate to your black man. You'll insult your man's integrity by comparing him to other nationalities of men that can conduct their business freely. And that is by design. Eventually, you'll grow tired of struggling with your black man. Your girlfriends, Amy, Becky, Lee, and Maria, are all doing very well. Their husbands have great jobs with excellent benefits. What's wrong with your black man? You watch him toil day in and day out with very little to show as your wifely duties become a bit much for you to bear, considering the situation. So you grow apart and eventually separate from him because you can do better without him. And that too is by design. During segregation, our people understood who was controlling the flow of money and resources. They knew not to trust this oppressive system. Black men and black women still married, had children, raised families, and made do. Unlike apartheid, desegregation gave us a false hope and illusion that we have an equal share of the American pie. All we have to do is work harder for it. However, it's still a rigged system with the money and resources controlled by our oppressor. Unfortunately, the black man and the black woman have lost insight of that, which brings stress and tension into the marriage. Now, for my brothers, when we're unaware of the truth, we're desensitized by the black woman's anxieties. I just covered why some black women may choose to date or marry other nationalities of men. But what's the black man's excuse for choosing women of other nationalities? For the most part, it's not because of finances or security. However, some of you may know that far too many of our black men, as soon as their finances start looking attractive, they look for something exotic. In his good fortune, when the black man should be upgrading his black woman's situation, instead looks for certain women that he couldn't have before. Wouldn't you know it, like devil's magic, that certain woman is now available to him once he gets his money right? And when the black man chooses her, it's an insult to our black women that has remained by our side since the horrors of slavery. Not only does this successful black man move out of our community, he takes his money with him into her community. Truth be told, our oppressors control the propaganda that defines what's beautiful and what's not. Hollywood for generations have projected the image of the European woman as the essence of beauty on the silver screen. From magazines to advertisements, the glorified image of the European has invaded our subconscious. And don't think that our children were spared from this propaganda. If you want to influence generations of people, you start with the children. To no surprise, the Snow White character was Disney's first to be memorialized on the silver screen in 1938. Snow White received her name because her mom, the queen, wished to give birth to a child with skin as white as snow. Let me repeat that. White as snow. More white, more beautiful, more pure, more desirable. Are you catching the subliminal? Now, to be clear, Disney is not the creator of this German fairy tale written in 1812. However, it's no coincidence that Disney chose it to be their first princess. And to think it only took Disney 71 years after Snow White to feature their first black princess in 2009 with The Princess and the Frog story. It was quite unfortunate that our black princess ran around as a green frog most of the story. Perhaps my expectations were just a little too high. Nonetheless, after 71 years of watching Disney portrayal of white princesses, the psyche of our black children has already been damaged. It would be naive to believe that there's no correlation that too many of our black men see the European woman as the quintessential princess, and he wants to be her so-called knight in shining armor. The hero saving the beautiful, fair-skinned, delicate, and helpless European damsel in distress. So there's a legit reason why the black woman may have frustrations that the successful black man she helped support may end up replacing her with another woman. More likely than not, a woman from a different nationality. It is by design. My brothers and sisters, when we know the truth behind the madness, we can do right by the Most High and do right by one another. When you're waking up to the truth, you understand what we as a people are up against. Remember, there's an end to all this madness when the Most High come and gather his people according to Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 3. Now, let's deal with the second area that requires our due diligence. We must identify and compartmentalize those contributing to the divide of the black man and the black woman. Without a united front, we have a wide spectrum of people with various ideologies, values, lifestyles, and agendas that are contributing to the dysfunction of the relationship of the black man and the black woman. Each group have their own language and set of principles, so it's difficult to articulate a solution whenever we come together, with each group speaking a different language. We cannot ignore the fact that we as a people are not on the same page on many issues. And without compartmentalizing the various groups, a rational discussion cannot take place. Let me be clear. Even compartmentalizing will be challenging because many of our people will have a problem being associated with the group that they'll actually fall in. These are our deceptive brothers and sisters who wish to keep their true intentions and desires hidden as they mislead anyone listening to their rhetoric. Confronting sin is not difficult, but iniquity, however, is a different beast altogether. Let's use a ship as an example of compartmentalization. We all know what happened to the Titanic, the largest ship of its kind that was considered to be unsinkable. Tragically, it sunk on its first voyage. They couldn't stop the water from pouring in from the damage caused by the iceberg that tore into its side. If a ship, no matter the size, take on too much water, it can't remain afloat. Now, if the Titanic was properly compartmentalized, like many of our modern ships, the flooding could have been stopped and isolated close to the location of the damage. You see, modern ships have numerous watertight compartments that, when closed, will stop the spread of water damage. Think of it like the honeycomb in a beehive, with each section being a watertight compartment. So if you place a modern ship in the Titanic situation, the ship will remain afloat and functional. Now, if we as a people can compartmentalize the various groups involved in the relationship of the black man and the black woman, we can actually minimize the damage being done and remain functional as a people. Take our people who like to swirl, for example. You compartmentalize them in their own group. Let that group have the discussion about the wonders of swirling without being distracted by those who don't desire it. And likewise, our black men and women who believe in only being with their own people for the sake of our future can have their discussion without interruption. As you can clearly see, the two groups I just mentioned are not even on the same page, although some swirlers will argue that they are. We need to stop entertaining discussions with people who don't share the same goal. We don't have time for reality TV nonsense. Stay in your group that fits your goals and desires. Without the compartmentalization, it's not possible to stay on topic. Once insults are thrown, the discussion takes a whole new life of its own, and it will go on for eternity without resolution. Try to imagine 100 years ago a group of adults gathered in a room, sitting at a table, discussing a very important decision that would impact their community for many generations. These same adults at the table are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and, although free, had little to no economic freedom to support a family, let alone build a community in an environment so hostile that many will pay the ultimate sacrifice, their lives. Can you imagine the atmosphere in that room as wisdom and knowledge commanded their attention? Everyone at the table totally aware of what was at stake. Just being at the table could cost them their lives. So, all were not invited to this discussion. I'm certain that extreme caution had to be taken to ensure the people chosen for this discussion were on the same page and trustworthy. That's compartmentalization. And anyone at that table talking foolishly would have been dismissed immediately. Now that's compartmentalization at its finest. We as a people are a long way from that kind of commitment and temperament. First and foremost, during that era of time, there wouldn't have been children in the room disrupting that conversation in no way, shape, or form. Today, however, it's like having a discussion in the midst of a daycare center while children are behaving badly. We might as well have the children sitting at the table weighing in on the discussion about the relationship of the black man and the black woman. This relationship is essential in keeping the black family intact, and that's the very reason why that relationship has been under attack for centuries. Some people would take offense to what I'm about to say next, but what's truly offensive is the various people who feel entitled to sit at our table and weigh in on this discussion. I'm speaking of those who are not vested in our people's future. And just because they may look like us doesn't mean that they're committed to us. This is why compartmentalizing and dismissing folks from the discussion is necessary. Now, going back to the children in the room, allow me to define who they are in this tit-for-tat, back and forth, never-ending social media circus. There are various groups of children that I will identify for the purpose of this discussion. It's time to put them to bed and allow the adults in the room to speak. The first group of children are those who are not our people. They're not even family, yet have a platform to speak at our table. Let me be clear. It doesn't matter whether you are married to our people or have children by our people or prefer being with our people. You have no seat at the table for this discussion. You may have plenty to say, like any child does, but you have nothing of value to offer in this discussion of bridging the divide between the black man and the black woman. If anything, you've capitalized off the deterioration of that very same relationship. Your mere presence in the room, let alone the table, violates the discussion, and that's why you're dismissed. Okay, I just identified one group of children which are not our people. Now I'll touch on the other children who are even more disruptive at our table, which happens to be our very own people. Surprise, surprise. These children are our own people that are not aware of who they are. Basically, those who we consider to be asleep. This includes those who refuse to believe that our past has been purposely hidden from us. Those willing to forget about the atrocities that our ancestors suffered during and long after slavery, and those who are willing to ignore the systematic oppression our people are still subjected to on a daily basis. You are children at this table. Your perception of the world is that of an innocent child and unaware of those around you with ill intent. You have nothing of value to offer in this discussion. You're dismissed. Then there's the other group of children, which happens to be our own people who prefer to date and marry any nationality except our own people. Enough said. You're dismissed. Now we get to the last group of children, which again happens to be our people who have no intention on committing themselves to establishing a family structure with our people. This includes both men and women. Let me repeat that. Both men and women who love to lay with our people, have babies with our people, and have no desire on establishing a family structure with our people that will benefit their own offspring. You're basically mass producing single parent children. You're incapable of preparing them to face their oppressors with any form of strategy or dignity. As horrible as it may be, in war, they call that cannon fodder. You're both a dysfunctional child at this table, and more than likely the angriest with the loudest voice. It took a black man and a black woman to produce this single-parent black child. So both of you have an equal share in creating this problematic situation. So let me be clear. I'm not condemning single parents. It is what it is. There are good ones out there, and there's bad ones. However, I do condemn the reckless behavior that causes our children to have just one parent. Both men and women contributing to this reckless behavior have nothing of value to offer in this discussion, and you're both dismissed. So, I just covered the various groups of children who are weighing in at our table, hindering any chance of forward progress with bridging the divide between the black man and the black woman. All of these children have some kind of beef, complaint, criticism, or agenda. It's a shame that we've tolerated them for this long. And I'm not saying that children are bad. They just don't belong in an adult discussion, especially one that requires a critical resolution. That's one thing back in the day that our people didn't tolerate. Children interrupting their conversations. Some of you know what I mean. We should follow suit. Now, I'll use myself for the sake of an example. I don't eat sushi. Just the thought of eating raw fish, no matter how small the portion, doesn't interest me one bit. And yes, I've tried it. However, I love my fish grilled, fried, or smoked. You can't sell me on the idea of eating it raw. I don't hate sushi. It's just not my preference. Now that being said, I have no business sitting at a table discussing sushi with a group of sushi enthusiasts, because I can only tell them how much I prefer my fish cooked. So I'm a child at this table with nothing of value to offer. The sushi enthusiasts should take offense of my presence at their table. I have nothing productive to offer in regards to preparing or eating sushi, and I'm in no way entitled to have a voice at their table, even if my wife likes sushi. I don't belong there, period. You see how that works? Now, I'm speaking to my brothers and sisters who are woke. Your discussion should only have woke brothers and sisters at your table when discussing the relationship between the black man and the black woman. It shouldn't take long to spot those who are still asleep or trolling your discussion. Dismiss them by not responding to their nonsense. That's the beauty of compartmentalizing. Identify the riffraff and keep the discussion productive and on topic. We must also acknowledge that there are different groups within the woke community that have their own disagreements. However, these disagreements do not make us enemies. This concludes part 1 of the division between the black man and the black woman. I look forward to you joining me in part 2. With that being said, always keep your trust in the Most High. Love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. See to it that your household is in line with the word of the Most High as best you can. I thank you for taking the time to watch, and with that, I say to you, Shalom.